This morning, there are some positive signs from the economy. News welcome to pretty much every American. The all-important credit markets, which famously froze during the recession, are now finally beginning to thaw a bit. And that hopeful sign for the continuing economic recovery is something that will likely come up during our town hall meeting here in Washington. When we speak with President Obama later today, you'll see it tomorrow here on The Early Show. CBS News business and economics correspondent Rebecca Jarvis is here with more on this. So some of what we're seeing is actually a little bit of a return to normal in the sense that Americans are going back to credit and to borrowing. Exactly. Consumers are back to borrowing now, and banks, and this is key here, banks are actually lending them the money. Bank lending was up $30 billion in the first quarter of this year, and why that's important is because obviously if you're an American, you want to buy a home, you want to buy a car, or you want to expand your business. In many cases, you're going to need a loan from a bank, and banks are now back to doing a little bit more lending than they were at the height of the crisis. So we should put this in perspective too, because this report looked at more lending, people going back to credit more, but there was a large focus on the irresponsible use of credit by many Americans in the past leading up to the recession. That's not necessarily what we're seeing. We're seeing some positive uses of credit. Exactly, and none of this stuff happens in a vacuum, Erica. So when we say people are back to borrowing, we also want to know that they're doing it responsibly, and that's what this report shows. Overdue bills are down 15%. On top of that, bankruptcies are down 13%. So at the end of the day, what we're seeing here is that people are back to borrowing, but they're doing it responsibly, and that's the exact kind of thing that you want to see to spur growth in the future. Okay, will it spur job growth? We have seen some of that, and I'll give you an example of what the ripple effect can be like. For example, car sales are way up in this country. We've seen it throughout the year. General Motors just today announced that they are going to be hiring 4,000 new workers with $2 billion. How does that happen? Well, it happens because we go out and buy a car, and eventually the ripple effect of our purchases as Americans create jobs, because there needs to be people to actually manufacture those cars and people to sell those cars. So the more we buy, to some extent, the better off the economy is. But again, we have to do it responsibly. And again, that's what this report shows. And this is really the heart and soul of our economy, because what if it's a consumer-driven economy? It's something like 70%, right? Yes, we are a consumer-driven economy. 70% of it, as you say, is driven by our spending, and that's what equates to the growth in this economy. When we spend money, it creates jobs. But again, we have to come back to, we have to do it responsibly in order to create a sustainable jobs picture. Obviously, we're still a ways away from all of that. We're still a ways away from moving the unemployment needle down from 9%, but this is a start. And when the credit markets have kind of come undone and thawed a little bit, all of a sudden we're feeling like we can spend a little more money because banks are giving it to us and lending it to us. And we should point out, you mentioned that 9% unemployment rate. Unemployment ticked up to 9% last Friday with the jobs report, but we did also see better than expected jobs created. Yes, better than expected jobs created, and a lot of them in the private sector, which is key here because private sector jobs, 244,000 jobs were created in the month of April. Private sector jobs are the ones that come from small businesses that handle American corporations, and that's exactly what we want to see, because that's the sustainable growth. It's not government spending growth, it's the sustainable growth that comes from the private sector. Well, that's one of the things we'll be looking at. Of course, we're also doing this town hall with the president later today. You've been going over some of the questions that have been submitted by folks at home. What's the main concern? Jobs, jobs, jobs continue to be front and center, but gasoline prices as well are a big one, obviously, because of the big increase we've seen. We'll be looking at those. You'll be there with us, of course, tomorrow at 8 a.m. right here on The Early Show. You'll see CBS News presents a town hall on the economy with President Obama. I'll be hosting along with Harry Smith. You can submit your questions at cbsnews.com.